Hi there, I'm Con.
And I'm David, and welcome to another episode of Camera Peeps. And in this episode, Con, what have you got for us?
Well, a while back ago, David, if you and our viewers remember, I did a video on my new EVA-1, which I used on the short film with David Richardson.
According to our LinkedIn statistics and our Facebook statistics, they were very popular.
It was a very popular video. Well, the EVA-1, the Panasonic EVA-1 is a very popular camera at the moment. And a lot of people are wondering, you know, what others are doing as far as a viewfinder solution and other configurations. I've really updated it since that last video. I've got this zacuto loop which I'm now using with the original LCD panel, and that is fantastic. That's my solution for a viewfinder. And the beauty about this solution, which I love, is that I'm using the same output from the camera, which is the viewfinder output, so I'm not sacrificing a HDMI or an SDI output.
And you're getting the camera information.
And I'm getting the camera information, although now they've done an update which through the HDMI you can get the same viewfinder information. But also powering the third-party viewfinder, that's the other consideration. If you use another third-party viewfinder, you've got to power it as well.
And also, if you do switch the camera on and the viewfinder's black, well, you have to try and work backwards and find out where the problem lies, and it could be a cable or
that's right. And you know, LCD might not be on. You know, you might, as a safety, if you were to use a third-party viewfinder, still put your viewfinder somewhere else and run that as a backup. Actually, you're right, in case your battery did die. But another thing, other than the viewfinder, which I've recently discovered and I love, is this Tilta Nucleus M motor, which we can see here on the bottom of the photograph. These are fairly new. I spent a bit of time last night getting to know how to use it, so I can talk about it. They're quite affordable. That's what attracted me to them, and they're quite versatile. The menu or how to set up the motor is a little complicated, but last night when I was going online checking out a few videos, I did notice that NAB 2018, they have a new firmware update which has an easy mode, which connects all the motors and sets them to the right channels and so forth.
So with the firmware update, there's a mini USB somewhere?
There is a USB port up the top here, which you connect to your computer. You download this comes up like a hard drive.
Right, okay.
So you dump
in the Finder window.
Yeah, in the Finder window. Now, it's a really weird way, the way they do the firmware updates. They have a Google Drive, which you can't find anywhere. Someone posted on Red User, this is the link to the Google Drive, and they have 3 folders. So if you've got 3 motors, you download the 3 folders into this remote. But I've only got the 2 motor product, so I downloaded 2 folders. So they get downloaded here. Then you use one of these LEMO connectors, which I have connected to the motor at the moment. You connect that into the remote and then plug it into the motor, and then you transfer. It says update file, and you say yes, and that's how you update the file. I think it's a very convoluted way, and I wish they would do an easier way of updating firmware.
Well, I guess it's an advantage of owning this product. You can get to know it. If you were picking it up from a rental house for a one-day shoot, you could be on the back foot a bit, but owning it, you can familiarise yourself.
As you can see here, this is the motor here. The torque on these motors, even at the lower setting, is way too strong, especially for DSLR lenses which don't have hard stops. My lens here actually has stops. I've got those rubber end stops on the gears, but I've tried doing an auto calibration. It just goes over them because the torque's too high. So they've reduced the torque even more. So I'm hoping to do the update after today's episode.
And is that easy to adjust? Like, let's just say you want to go to a cinema lens.
Yeah.
You can then ramp the torque back up.
It's just in the menu. You go in the menu, press a couple of buttons, and you can increase it.
So another thing I really like about this viewfinder is that you can cover up the eyepiece to obviously protect it from the sun.
Now, I remember from the old 5D days, I didn't do it, but I know a lot of cameramen who had 5Ds and the loops that went over the back screen. about 50% of them are burnt spots on the LCD because the sun used to get in through the viewfinder and like a magnifying glass, just burn a hole through the screen. So that's what these rubber cups there to protect the lens in case you forget and the sun goes through. So I love that. Just to run you through how you set up this motor on a photographic lens like my Canon L series zoom. There is a bit of a process, and I had to get myself up to speed with how it all works last night, and I think I've got it down pat. Okay, so one thing I haven't done yet is calibrate the motor manually to this lens, because this lens doesn't have hard stops. So what you do is go into the menu, go down to function, hit enter, a manual calibrate, enter, and hit focus, because that's the mode I'm doing, and it says turn focus until minimum lock on the motors. So I'm turning my focus to the minimums, which is about there, and I am making sure before I engage the motor that the focus wheel is turned all the way to the right. Then I will engage my motor, lock that into position to the lens, the gears on the lens, and then I'll hit enter, and now it's telling me turn the knob, the focus knob, until I reach my infinity. So I'm just going to quickly do that up the top. So I'm going to reach to there. You've got to do it slowly so you don't go past that point, which is there. And now I'm going to hit OK, and now I've got a range. So if we have a look here on the gears on the motor, we can see that I have now got my range for my motors. And on the remote here, if I want to have control of my motors through the hand grips, I just hit the function button twice, and the remote vibrates, and I see here it says slave. So now I have control of my motors through my hand grips. So I can control focus now using the hand grip. So I think that's fantastic.
That is good.
Yeah.
So with the hand control, can you change the direction of the
yes,
wheel?
in the menu you can change the direction. And another handy thing is you can actually set marks. There's a button here called mark. So I can focus, say, on the table, say there, and hit the mark button twice. So I've got an A mark there, then I find where my B mark is, and it might be infinity, or just before infinity, hit the mark button again. Now I've memorized 2 focus points.
That's pretty good.
I don't even have to look at the remote.
So it physically locks it?
Well, it gives me marks.
Yeah,
I don't have to mark the lens if I don't want to. Right. And when you pass that mark, it vibrates.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So you can be looking at your monitor and feel when you hit the mark. Oh, and you're right there. So, and I know where I am. Yeah. There's a bit of hunting to get it precise. Yeah.
These have been out for a little while now. Have you had any feedback from people who do this for a living, focus pullers who do this for a living?
I don't know. A lot of people, professional focus pullers who have this, they probably can afford the really expensive, good ones, industry standard ones. But for a lot of people who don't want to spend a lot of money on those ARRI remotes and other brands that are more expensive, this is a great alternative. And I think Lehman was saying, like, they've sold 20 straight up in the first batch.
Well, now these right angle, I just don't want to forget to talk about these because these are quite relevant. So these are to get this system on. Yeah,
the ARRI rosettes, actually that part goes in there, and then you've got an ARRI rosette, as you can see here on the handle. That's how you would mount it to an ARRI rosette. Oops. I've got a Vocus bracket here that allows me, with an extension rod there, to put it roughly there.
These ones.
Now, these ones, if you're got a gimbal, these ones will go on the end of your gimbal. So you can then have the 2 handles. They just screw on the top there. So you can control your focus and iris using and hold the gimbal using these grips.
So the Movi and the DJI obviously have the same diameter tube. Okay, so and that's another great use for these things because less cables to upset the balance.
That's right, because it's all I think you still have to power the motors, and at the moment I'm powering them using the remote, but I think there's another way of powering them. I've got a battery on the back of the camera here. It's an IDX battery that has a 8 volt output. I think it's an X-tap. It's a new connector, X-tap. So I think I'm going to get that cable and get the appropriate Hirose button to then power the motor, so I don't have to have this cable going into it. Especially on the Steadicam, I think that'll be a good solution for me.
A day in the man cave should sort this out.
Yeah, and a trip to my technician, because Hirose cables I can't make. You know, and Satora is fantastic. He's a local Melbourne focus puller, career focus puller, who also makes cables, and and I think Neil at Lemac also makes cables for you. So there's plenty of opportunities there to get those modified. Obviously, it comes with a charger, 4-bay charger. They come with these special torch-like batteries. This one takes 2. I think you get 6 all up in the kit.
And are they lithium? Oh, do we know?
They're lithiums, So I think I'll get myself another set, just have the spares. But I think the batteries do run a long time anyway.
So every time a new product comes out, Pelican shares must go up because you need a new case.
Well, funny enough, it comes in its own case, which is really nice. And we might have a look of how that's come out. That's another thing I love. So it's a really turnkey solution. You've got your cables, your charger that goes in there, your 3 motors that go in there, the 2 handles. What else? Oh yeah, and the and this bit goes in here. So it's a real small, neat little package. Comes with 3 focus rings, plus the one on the.
I just thought you brought some of your bracelets along, Con, but no. It's for
yes, they don't fit.
No, okay.
And it also comes with 2 gear rings there. I've got my own from Vocus. And there's another way of powering the motor. It's a P-tap, and that goes to the, I don't know how many pin Hirose that powers the motor. So that's another way. And I believe Core make a battery for the EVA-1 that has a 12 volt output.
Yeah, right.
Which will probably also work. One other thing I'd like to talk about is my shoulder handheld operating configuration. I've got this shape rig here, which I love, and the top plate and handle. Another thing, if we can cut to the 2-shot camera, which I would say I love about Shape, and I think they've got the market stitched, is this push button adjust on the handles, quick and easy. I think that's the best feature about the Shape products. So these are the new bits and bobs I've put on for my EVA-1. Oh, the last thing I'll talk about is, especially with my Steadicam, I was wondering, well, how do I transmit a picture without getting a bulky transmitter on? And I've had this IDX cw1 transmitter for a while, and guess what? I don't have to have a separate power supply, battery power supply that it comes with to power it. The EVA-1 has a USB port at the back which will power it, which is great. And I just take a HDMI out into it. The only thing that I have to work on is mounting it. At the moment I've got a temporary solution, which is a cable tie. It doesn't have a very neat sort of solution. You've got to do what you've got to do. Yeah. But I'll work something out.
Yeah, no, that looks good. That looks good, yeah.
So yeah, this is the latest configuration of my EVA-1 with the zacuto viewfinder for the EVA-1, the Tilta Nucleus M for the focus, the IDX cw1 for the transmitter, and and the Shape shoulder rig. Yeah, right. That's right.
It looks good.
Yep.
Yeah, and you've been using it, and you have obviously an update on the camera just after the last few months of owning it.
Yeah. Well, the motors are new. I haven't actually used them on an actual job yet, but I'm sure.
But you love the camera, right?
I love the camera. I love the weight. I love the picture quality. 5.7K sensor. The dual native ISO means I can shoot almost anywhere without a worry. Obviously, we always have to light for good quality work, but it just is handy to have that up your sleeve when you need. When you're running gunning, you can't light everything.
No, that looks good, and I think you've done a lot of practical research for EVA-1 owners, and I'm sure they'll get quite quite a lot out of this video.
I hope so. Oh, and can I just say one last thing? I forgot to mention the VCT plate from Shape. I really love it. There's hardly any play on that.
Okay.
That's like welded onto the plate. That's one thing I find with a lot of VCT plates. Some of them are a bit sloppy.
And they do, after a few years, loosen up a bit as well.
Oh, they do? Yeah. I wish they would invent a way of tightening something to bring it back to tolerances.
I think that's too low tech for this world we live in now. I don't think anyone's going to bother with
They just say, throw it away, buy a new one.
Exactly. All right, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.